In 2008, archaeologists digging in a cave in southwestern Germany pulled a small fragment of hollow bone from the sediment. It was 40,000 years old. When they reconstructed it, they found five finger holes, carefully spaced, deliberately carved into the wing bone of a vulture. They put it to their lips and blew. And from a bone that had been sitting in German soil since before any city, any government, any written word existed on this planet, music came out. That flute is the oldest musical instrument ever found, and the person who made it was not making it to survive. They were making it because they were bored. And what ancient humans did with boredom is one of the most important and least told stories in human history. Most people assume ancient life was a constant grind, hunting from dawn to dusk, collecting firewood, running from predators. No time for anything except staying alive. That assumption is wrong. In 1966, anthropologist Marshall Salins published a study that changed everything we thought we knew about prehistoric life. He called it the original Affluent Society. His research on modern hunter-gatherer groups, the closest living approximation of how humans lived for 95% of our history, found something nobody expected. Hunter-gatherers work between 3 and 5 hours per day to meet all their survival needs. Not 12 hours, not 10, 3 to 5. The Fayakung people of the Kalahari spent roughly 15 hours per week acquiring food. The rest of the time was theirs. Talking, resting, playing. Your ancestors had more free time than you do. The whole Fels flute is 40,000 years old, but it is not the only one. At Divja Babe Cave in Slovenia, researchers found a bear femur with 4 holes in it dated to 60,000 years ago. If the holes are deliberate, and the spacing suggests they are, this instrument was made not by modern humans, but by Neanderthals. Music may predate our species entirely, but why music at all? What survival advantage does a vulture-wing bone flute provide? None. Zero. You cannot eat music. You cannot build shelter with it, and yet every human culture on Earth, without a single exception, has music. Every one. Isolated islands, remote valleys, tribes with no outside contact, all of them sing, all of them drum. The universality of music suggests it is not optional. It is as fundamental to being human as language. What music actually does is change the brain. It synchronizes heartbeats across a group. It releases dopamine, the same chemical released by food and warmth. It coordinates frightened individuals into shared emotional states. When your ancestors gathered around a fire, and someone started beating a rhythm on a hollow log, that rhythm was not entertainment. It was social infrastructure. It was the technology that transformed a group of frightened animals into a tribe. Robin Dunbar spent 20 years studying what humans talk about when they are not talking about anything important. His finding, 65% of human conversation in every culture ever studied is devoted to social information. Who did what, to whom, who can be trusted. Dunbar argued this is the human equivalent of primate grooming. Language as a long-distance tool to maintain bonds that physical touch could no longer reach at scale. Which means that for hundreds of thousands of years, when ancient humans sat around a fire with nothing to do, what they were doing was not nothing. They were maintaining the social fabric that made cooperation possible. They were telling stories, myths, legends, narratives that connected individuals to something larger than themselves. Boredom was the condition under which society was built. When the brain has no external task to process, it activates what researchers call the default mode network. Brain regions that fire specifically during rest, daydreaming, and unfocused thought. What this network does is generate. It takes existing experiences and recombines them into scenarios that have never happened. It is the biological architecture of imagination, and it requires one specific condition to operate: silence, unoccupied time, boredom. When your ancestors had nothing to do, their brains did not idle. They created. The Venus of Hohle is 40,000 years old, a small figure carved from mammoth ivory, smooth where it has been held thousands of times. Someone made this during the Ice Age, not to survive, because the downtime generated an image and the hands needed to make it real. And then there were games. The royal game of is 4,600 years old. the oldest board game with a complete written rulebook ever discovered. Play is not a luxury. It is a training environment. Every game practices something real. Coordination, strategy, reading opponents, tolerating failure. Games were the place where your ancestors learned to think under pressure before the pressure was real. So here is what ancient humans actually did with boredom. They picked up bones and carved them into flutes. They sat around fires and talked about everyone they knew. They shaped ivory into figures that would survive 40,000 years. They invented games to practice skills without the cost of real failure. And in doing all of this, they built the cultural infrastructure that turned a species of frightened social animals into the civilization you are living in right now. Modern boredom is different. You feel it for 30 seconds and reach for your phone. Your brain gets a hit of stimulation, and the default mode network never gets the silence it needs to start generating. The itch gets scratched before it produces anything. Your ancestors had no phone. When the boredom came, the only way through it was to make something. And what they made on the other side of it was music, was art, was story, was everything. Boredom was not the enemy of ancient human life. It was the engine. And the 30 seconds before you reach for your phone, the moment the boredom first arrives and has not yet been answered, that might be the most important creative window you have all day. What you do with it is still your choice.